Welcome traders, and welcome to this week's session of Mastering the Markets with me, Matt. As you guys all know, I am a senior analyst at Prime XBT, and I'm super excited to be here with you guys on today's trading session. Today is going to be a bit of a mix-up. We've got a live sort of data release happening through our trading session, so that's going to be quite awesome to see. That is going to mainly be the CPI inflation data results coming out for the US. Now that's going to be coming out in about 28 minutes, so we are going to stay tuned live for that announcement, and I'm really curious to see how that data result comes out. Previously we came in at 3.3%, and they are kind of forecasting it that is going to kind of stay at that level too. A key sort of data point to kind of watch is definitely going to be the core CPI data point as well. So if you have not already gone on our Prime XBT platform, you can do so by either signing up through the main portal page. I'm actually on our learn and research section right now, and just to the left of that is the tools section, right? And I pretty much use this quite daily in terms of trying to figure out what is happening from both a fundamental as well as a technical analysis point of view. So if you have not already seen, we have a really cool function where you can find the economic calendar under the tools section, and then also under our learn and research section we have a lot of daily sort of market research posts that come up. That is pretty much a mixture of technical analysis as well as fundamental research. So if you have not checked that out already, go and do so. But let's jump right into it today. I'm super excited to be with you guys and looking forward to kind of unpacking what is happening in the markets. So as we all know, last week, Donald Trump got elected as the 47th president of the United States. Now, that has been quite an impressive sort of turnaround for Trump, especially considering he was not successful in his prior run and Biden actually was elected. So this is going to be quite interesting going forward. I'm very curious to see how the markets are going to kind of trade. We unpacked this last week quite in detail in terms of, you know, what it meant for the markets, especially the financial industry in general. Going forward with Trump being elected, it's been quite interesting to see how the markets have reacted really positively to this news announcement, and I'm quite curious to see if we can continue this momentum kind of into the end of this quarter and pretty much into the new year. So taking a look at Bitcoin, I mean, we pretty much were analyzing this price action last week Wednesday and Thursday, and we pretty much had seen, you know, that move into say new all-time highs at around $75,000 or so, and that was quite a monumental sort of move for Bitcoin in that short period of time. You know, we pretty much had we didn't really have much pullbacks once we went through there. I kind of was expecting a little bit of a, you know, if we were going to range, kind of see how we would react to those levels around the all-time high. We pretty much punched through that quite quickly, and we mitigated both $80,000 as well as $90,000 shortly thereafter. So Bitcoin has been on an impressive run. I think week on week we almost had a 20% move, and you can already see this week into pretty much mid-November we continuing to push. I think we are about 5 or 6% up on the week. Yeah, almost 8% now it looks like. So that has been quite a monumental sort of push for Bitcoin. What I'm going to be looking for going forward is going to be pretty much one of two things, right? So pretty much in terms of how the cycles are kind of playing out now, everything seems to be quite in alignment with how the theories work, especially from a cyclical time period. So we're kind of running into that phase where things go bananas, and that's pretty much where we are seeing a lot of altcoins kind of trying to pick up their feet. You know, we've seen Ethereum finally break through that resistance area of around $2,800. We've seen the likes of Solana continue to push into new highs for the year at around $220. Now remember, none of these major altcoins have actually hit their previous all-time highs. So this is kind of when we start to see that like shift in momentum, and that's pretty much what we are looking for, right? So if I have a look here quickly, I actually just wanted to draw this up for you now. So pretty much since we had that move down to about $49,000, which was around August sometime, so actually not that long ago, you know, we've seen a pretty tremendous move back to the upside. You know, Bitcoin's almost moved as high as 84% since then. So this was quite a key area for us that we had over here. If you mark this out as your resistance area, right? And now you can see how we've pretty much broken through this quite convincingly. And that was something I've been mentioning in the prior streams. I said, I don't really want to kind of get involved too much from a leverage standpoint until I see clear structure confirmations, and I see those sort of confirmations coming through now, because we can then jump on the bandwagon and we can jump on the trends, right? So this is pretty much an area of interest that I've got marked out on BTC right now. I'd be quite curious to see if we can potentially re-tap into this area and then potentially look for continuation longs thereafter. You know, we do kind of see in these bull market environments, these heavy whipshaws. I mean, yesterday and today, we've kind of seen price cool off a little bit, not a lot, but we have started to see a bit of, a flush out, especially within the altcoin space. And from prior experience, Bitcoin moves, say 5 to 10%. That's pretty much a 20 to 30% move on any altcoin, right? So this is where it gets quite interesting. This is where it gets kind of difficult in these times, because you entering into price discovery areas, you don't know how high price will push. You can only really estimate. We've already hit $80,000 and $90,000. I think a lot of people had their eyes, say, on 100 to 150. If we hit 100 before the end of the year, how do we go about reevaluating from there in terms of where we think price will go? And that's kind of the key question going forward, right? So if I drop back down into the daily time frame, in these scenarios now, this is pretty much exactly what I love to play. So what I mean by that is, if you have a look now, right? So let's say, for example, well, this was our previous resistance area over here. If I just zoom this in a bit, you can see a bit better. So we pretty much broke out the structure point and say the high of around $74,000. Now that was kind of a major resistance area for us at the time. And I was quite interested to see if we were going to either break this area over here. So that would have been our structural low, or if we continue to the upside, and we actually held in this area quite nicely, and this is where we pushed out of. So how do I go about entering into trades from here? It's pretty simple, especially from both a leverage and futures point of view. I'm not necessarily going to be trying to enter at the top of the market over here and say running a stop loss as deep as around 65,000 or 66,500, and then having a small target of, say, $100,000, right? My risk to reward is completely out. There's no point in actually taking a setup like that. So what I will do is I will rather look now for some sort of price action to kind of cool off a little bit. And the way in which I like to do that is pretty much using my fractal indicator, which kind of tells me the highs and the lows. Obviously that needs to take into account a couple of candles. So we're not necessarily going to get the nearest high marked out just yet. It might take a couple of days before that prints out. So what I'll do is, in this example, if you have a look over here, let's say, for example, you can already see on the daily RSI indicator, we've actually breached the 70% level, suggesting that price is overbought into this area. Remember, I don't really solely use the RSI indicator to kind of take trades based on that. I won't necessarily try and look for a short counter trend trade back into, say, pro trend longs, because that's when you kind of get chopped up in the market a bit. So I'd rather wait and sit on my hands for, say, a pro trend play. I would look for a sort of discounted play, something like this. So let's say, for example, this was my high over here at around $90,000, and that was my low at around 66,500. Why am I interested in this? Well, this was the major sort of move that kind of broke into this new all-time high over here. So if I had to mark this out over here, and you guys can see now, so pretty much I would like to then only really solely focus on this sort of move. This would be my most recent leg. That is the recent leg that I'm interested in, right? So what I will be looking for now, especially from a leverage point of view, is something like this. So you have two scenarios, right? One would be, this is your structure break over here, which is very valid. And if you have a look over on the right hand side, that will kind of mark up or align with, say, previous all-time highs, $73,000, $74,000. And if you have a look here, this is also our previous high that was sitting there at around 72,000. So you've got a couple of scenarios. This is how I would personally go about looking for potential long ideas from here. Okay, so this would be one area of interest that I'd mark out, something like that. I'm just going to bring this in a bit. Look something like that. And then I'm going to mark out this high over there. Okay, so now what do you look for? It's really simple. Okay, so you've got one of two things. There's one or two ways you can do this. So you can either take the 50% discount tap. So pretty much what you're looking for is you're looking for price to kind of rebalance. So you're looking for an extensive push. You're trying to find that exhaustion area. So if you have a look in this example, we might potentially be a bit overextended here, especially on the daily time frame. It's not to say that we won't potentially push higher. However, I would not write off the fact that a potential pullback could be on the cards, especially considering the run we had. So if I was to leverage buy this now, I would look for something like this. I would try and then start to scale into the position. So what do I mean by that, right? I will take multiple entries, trying to kind of get a pretty much an average discount buy, and that kind of average purchase price will then be the sort of momentum and volatility, as well as the size in which I am wanting to trade. That is how I will look to kind of play this next move, right? And then from here on out, this is where it gets quite interesting, right? You've got pretty much one of two things that can happen. We either start pushing into psychological levels, say like $100,000. So if I just mark that out over here, then if we had to go up and say increments of 50, so we've already tapped into 90, we burst through 80. It's not to say that we won't burst through 100 either. So I would pretty much look to try and do something between, ultimately, I would like to trade Bitcoin up to say around a high of 150. Let's just say we've got this market marked out around here. Okay, so if you have a look here now, this is pretty much how you can dissect your target profits going into say new all-time highs. Because we are entering into price discovery regions, we don't know where price will turn. We don't know where price will go or trade to. We can just kind of estimate where we think potentially price might reverse from, right? And if you have a look here now, this is pretty simple. So you can either go up in increments of 10,000. So you can go 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, and you can kind of look to scale out of your positions like that. Or you can use the Fibonacci tool, something like this. And let's say, for example, I put on my extensions. So let's say I'm looking for -1 and -2. And let's say, for example, you would like to have that marked out like this. So these are kind of extension levels that you can potentially look into. So let's say, for example, we want to mark out this potential level, which would kind of be almost a standard deviation away from that discounted area. And then it's a fancy word for a Fibonacci extension tool. And then if you have a look over here, that would be my second level, right? So this is how I would pretty much try and now dissect where I think price might move to. And if you have a look over here, you can pretty much do something similar. I would look to try and scale into my entries. So what I mean by that, I would have potentially an entry at the 50% level tap of that Fibonacci tool. I would then have an entry at this level over here, and I would have my stop loss just below, and that will give me ultimately a better risk to reward. So let's say we were even just trading this back into say new all-time highs of around $100,000. I would look for some sort of quick reversal into this area over here, and then try and capture the move back to the upside, right? So that is why I'm quite curious to see if we can get into these levels down here. You can also see that this is quite a nice level of demand sitting down here. So that is pretty much how I would try and capitalize on this move. So simply just marking out the low and the high. If this is the high, we might make a new high. Then you just need to reevaluate where you want to move your premium and discount tool. And then pretty much from there, you can kind of gauge where you think price might trade to and where you think price action will move, right? So how can you trade this on Prime XBT? Really simple. So I've already got an account set up on my Prime XBT portal, but if you have not done so, you can go to the main landing page and sign up an account. Once you've obviously made the necessary deposit into your account and you've verified yourself, the account funding will look something like this. So it's quite simple. As I've mentioned in both my tutorials and previous live trading sessions with you guys, you would need to then transfer the funding out of this account and into your actual CFDs trading platform or your crypto futures platform. So for this example, let's say I would like to go to my CFD trading platform and I would like to kind of take an executed position on BTC. I would go and pretty much need to move the money first, obviously, from your wallet address. So I would go onto my USD account over here. I would then select the amount of funding. So let's say, for example, I'd like to move $100. I'd need to make sure that my destination account is set correctly. So in this example, I've got it already set on CFD trading, but you might have it defaulted as your wallet address or your crypto futures address. So that pretty much means you would need to transfer or change that up. So it looks something like that. You go confirm. The funding will then leave your account, and then that will be pretty much it being transferred into your actual terminal, right? So how do I now go and execute any positions? I simply go and click on this over here, and it then will load up once it is ready. And then it'll look something like this, right? So this pretty much is my terminal, okay? You can have a look over here on the left-hand side. You've got a couple of options. So you might be defaulted to all markets, but you can actually filter that down both into your CFDs, crypto, as well as your Forex markets, right? So if you go and have a look at the crypto section over here, you have a range of assets that you can trade. So let's say, for example, I would like to trade Bitcoin. I go select the ticker name, which in this scenario would be BTC USD. And then based on my analysis, I would like to then potentially enter into some buy limit entries, right? Because remember, price is currently trading above where I would like to enter. So when price moves into a discounted area or moves into the area that I'm interested in buying, it will then get triggered if I have something like a buy limit set, okay? So how do you do that? You simply click on where it says buy, and obviously vice versa if you wanted to sell. And then you can either change the lot size here, or you can simply click on here and it'll pop up a new order widget that looks something like this, and you can choose. So under order type, it's already defaulted to be market. I don't necessarily want to enter here at market, so I will need to go and change that. So I will change it to limit. Make sure your side is correct. Obviously, you do not want to be necessarily selling a sell limit at this entry price. It'll just market execute for you. And then if you want to have your stop loss and take profit, you would need to enable that section over here at the bottom, right? Just under margin impact, okay? So that's pretty much in a nutshell how that would work. In terms of actually entering your limit price, it would look something like this. You would need to go and actually input that yourself manually. So let's say, for example, I would like to have my first trade at around $78,435. Then I would go back to the terminal. And let's say, for example, I would like my contract size to be around 0.01. I would need to then go and input that. So it was around 78. Call it 78,500. So 78,500 would be the first sort of buy limit entry that I would like to get tagged into. My stop loss in this case would be around 66,500. Just going to round that up for educational purposes. 65,500. And now you can see here, my projected loss would be around $65, right? So I potentially, or in scenarios like this, I like to risk between 1 to 2% of my account. So if you have a look there now, that is actually perfectly working out for me. I've got around $7,000 in this account, and I'll be risking around $65 on this trade. So if I wanted to double that up, I could simply make that 0.02. Now you'll see it'll have a risk of 131. Why do I do that? I purely like to trade my accounts based on strict risk management processes. When I have, say, a stop loss and fixed risk like this, I'm only bound to that certain risk kind of taking me out. So if the market does move against me, it doesn't necessarily matter if I'm wrong, because I then have calculated my risk correctly and I've also protected myself, right? And then let's say, for example, I would like to go and have my take profit level set at around 100,000 as my first level. I'll then go and change this here. So you can modify the take profit level to around 100,000. And there you'll see I'm getting pretty much just around a 1.5. So it would be around $200 projected profit if this actually hits TP. Right, remember this is not going to be a market order, so this is going to sit underneath your orders section. So just above my face around this left hand side, you'll see it says orders. I'll try bring that up for you a bit. Yeah, there we go. You can pretty much see it like that. And there you can now see I've got this active position running at a price of 78,500, and you can pretty much then go see any other positions you may have. So if you've got any live positions running, that will sit underneath the position section. So if you have a look here, you can already see I've got an ETH position running at around 0.17 and around $58. Now remember, that was based off our previous stream where I mentioned I was using buy stops to pretty much get in and out of trades. That's how I like to kind of maneuver between, say, market ideas, etc. Now something I wanted to show you further is if you have a look over here, so you can simply drag and drop this function over here, and that will change the design of the layout of the terminal for you. So if you have a look over here, we can now see I've got my entry price at around 78,500, 0.2 contracts. If you click on this button over here, so maybe we can zoom in a bit. Let's go onto the daily time frame over here. Okay, so if you have a look now, so if I click on this button, so where it pretty much says the actual entry price as well as the amount of contracts that you've got set at that level, you can pretty much click that, and then you'll be able to manually actually update that depending on, say, a couple of things. So let's say, for example, I would like to move my stop loss or my take profit level. I can pretty much do one of two things. I can either move it like that, it will then kind of change it for you automatically. I can go edit and replace, and I can go confirm. I click on it again, and now you can see my stop loss is just below that level. Let's say, for example, you wanted to then increase your take profit level. You can do that manually by either clicking on this, and you can drag and drop it yourself. And then if you edit and replace and confirm the order, you can now see that I've actually gone and manually changed my take profit as well as my stop loss level by not even actually having to go and click on the order position and changing it yourself. So that is a really cool function. That is how I like to kind of go about potentially entering into these trades. So I think that is a great idea on BTC. I'm quite curious to see if we're going to continue trading higher before we actually go lower again. It looks like we have picked up some momentum going into CPI inflation data results. So that's going to be quite interesting to see. Another kind of point I was quite keen on going over was, say, gold's price action. I know we broke this down last week in our stream, but I wanted to just show you how pretty much now that we've seen Trump being elected as the president, there's definitely a bit more certainty within the market. The market loves certainty. You can see that now. We're seeing safe haven assets such as gold see a bit of a cool off. You know, I did mention that we were a bit overextended, especially on the RSI indicator. You could see that. It's just very difficult to kind of determine when you're going to get these pullbacks on assets that are really trending in one sort of dimension. So if you have a look here, you can already see pretty much since the election of Trump, we've had price almost drop around 6%. Now, 6% down on gold is quite a lot, considering it's up already like 40% on the year. So I'm going to be quite interested to see. We can already look over here, and you can see that weekly structure points are starting to kind of break. You know, sometimes these might be just actual liquidity sweeps before we continue to trade higher. So it's going to be quite interesting to see. I'm going to actually hop over onto the monthly time frame. Yeah, you can pretty much see how we've had an absolute run on this over the last couple of years. So, you know, I'm not necessarily saying that we're going to get a complete pullback into levels of, say, around 2000, but you know, if we do kind of see that price action and we continue to see price cooling off because there is a bit more certainty in the market, I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of traded back down into these lower areas. You can also view on, say, the monthly time frame how we have these displacements and fair value gaps sitting down here. And these are pretty much just areas of interest that you can kind of add to your arsenal when trading. And if you have a look here now, we have actually come into one of these displacement areas here too. So these are kind of just inefficiencies in the market. So we might potentially reverse from here. There's not really many displacements besides those two, and obviously you've got one sitting here. So these could be quite interesting. You know, price obviously has been trending quite bullish over the last sort of few months. So I'm going to be quite eager to see how price action forms over here. We also have this sort of resistance area sitting down here, which we obviously broke above. And then we kind of retested and continue to trade higher. Now it's just a case of, do we come deeper? So another key tool that I like to use is my 50 EMA. So if you have a look at this daily 50 EMA, you can see how it's trending pretty much in alignment with this internal ascending trend line over here, right? And you can pretty much map that out with these price levels over here. So gold is at quite an interesting point in time. I'm quite curious to see how we're going to trade over the next few days. I think also with the release of data results such as inflation, that might kind of bring in a bit of, say, uncertainty back into the market. You know, we've kind of seen inflation semi-cooling off from a core CPI perspective. But if we kind of start to push higher again, we're going to really have to keep our eyes out on those data points, because the Fed just cut interest rates again last week by 0.25%. So naturally, when inflation is coming down to a more respectable level, the Fed then feels the need to, or sees the need to kind of cut interest rates in alignment with inflation coming down. However, if inflation starts to turn back up and inflation starts to push out higher again, which we all are kind of under the assumption that that may happen under the Trump administration, etc., which may be in, say, a couple years from now, that is where we're going to have to really keep our eyes out on, say, interest rate decisions from the Fed. Does the Fed then have to kind of increase interest rates again? What sort of impact is that going to have on the markets? Those are going to be quite key and important things to keep in the back of your mind. So gold for now is pretty much in a really tricky position, in my opinion. If I wanted to maybe potentially look at something from a bigger discount zone, I would look for something like this. And the reason I'd be interested in that is because if you have a look over here, this is pretty much where we started to push higher. We then broke that, we made our structural high. If we come back and retest something in here, that would be great. However, I don't think we get that much discount on gold before trading higher again. And I would be quite curious to see if we can hold in these areas of interest, something like this. So let's say we had to use the same principle that I showed you when marking out our BTC chart earlier. If you have a look at this, say, move over here, right? I kind of want to just maybe show you how this could move. So that is pretty much my low over here. This would be my high over here. So if we are kind of experiencing that longer, or say bigger, deeper pullback, I'd be quite curious to see how price reacts down here. Let's say, for example, this daily 50 EMA continues to trade something like this over, say, the next couple of months or whatever it may be. I'll be then interested to see if we start reacting quite positively out of these areas, and then potentially looking for some further longs back to the upside. So for me personally, now on gold, I'd be looking to either take some counter trend shorts. So you could, for example, look something like this, where you have a short sort of entry going down back into lower times of sort of lower points of interest. However, I'm quite a big fan of pro trend trading. So I would rather just sit on my hands with something like gold and wait for a sort of discounted pullback, and then pretty much looking for higher continuation into the upside thereafter. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what I'd be looking at from both a BTC and gold perspective. But let's hop over now to the CPI data results. So we've actually got CPI data coming out in 7 seconds, it looks like. So let's see what this data result looks like, and we'll have a look at price action thereafter. I'm going to be quite curious to see how the dollar index is actually going to be moving in this example. We have been pushing higher. So let's see what the data result comes in at. It's still pending, it says. So core CPI has come out flat at 0.3%, which was actually in alignment with forecast. Now let's see what CPI comes in month on month. Okay, 0.2%. So we've actually had a slight increase now. That is very interesting. That is actually very interesting. So CPI year on year, we've had an increase from 2.4% to 2.6%. Now, this was a risk I was kind of explaining earlier last week that I was quite interested to see, because we had the likes of, say, the interest rate cuts. You can kind of see how the momentum is picking back up into the markets right now. We've actually had the dollar index drop quite dramatically there. Crypto seems to be acting favorably to this news announcement. BTC is actually on the up again. It looks like we might be trading back into $90,000. Dogecoin has actually been performing really well, based I think on pretty much Elon and Trump kind of being in election together. They worked really well. Volatility index isn't actually really showing any signs of this being quite a major move. So I'm going to be quite interested to see how this data point kind of plays out over the next few days. We can already see the dollar index is actually kind of cooling off a bit. So yeah, this is going to be quite interesting. I'm very curious to see how this is going to react. S&P 500 is not really reacting to that too badly either. We can also see something like this over here. Price looks to actually kind of be quite overextended too. So applying the same sort of principles, there is your recent low, there is your recent high, and then all you're looking for pretty much is some sort of pullback into discounted regions and then pushing higher thereafter. So that is going to be quite interesting to see. I was not expecting CPI to come out year on year at a higher level, but core CPI actually remained flat at 0.3%. So that might be the balancing act in this data point. So that was quite interesting. I will deep dive into this a little bit further for you guys on the Telegram Academy group. I will also be writing a research report next week, so I will release that out for you guys. And yeah, thanks for tuning into this week's live session. It's been a good one. I will try and actually incorporate a bit more of these data points in our sort of live stream so we can unpack them together, actually see the live results come in, have a look at the liquidity and the volume coming into the markets, and kind of make sort of decisions thereafter. Dollar index seems to be kind of recovering a little bit. BTC and ETH not really reacting too much to this announcement. So I think it might take a bit of time still. New York Open is coming, say, in the next hour or so. So let's see maybe what New York Open has in store for us. But thanks for joining into this week's live trading session. And I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something. Get your questions in. Make sure you enter into the competition, and I will get through to some of those questions either in the next session or live on the actual chat. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's live trading session, and I'll catch you for next week's.